Hola, hola, and buenos dias, buenas tardes, or buenas noches, depending on when you are catching this episode of Tech and Tequila. First and foremost, I'm Kat Lopez Shelby. Welcome to Tech and Tequila. If you don't know me, well, oh my goodness, you're in for a treat because I am your techie chica. And there's nothing that I love more than blending digital know how with a little bit of fun. And as always, we will be diving into things tech, but with a twist.
Welcome, welcome, and bienvenidos. Thank you for joining us on the podcast, Tech and Tequila. If you don't know who I am, I'm Kat Lopez Shelby, and I'm the founder and CEO of Shelby Technology Solutions. But more importantly, you're here for Tech and Tequila, where we learn a lot about tech and we may have some nice tequila drinks while we're at it. If you're new here, Tech and Tequila is all about everything technology based for your business. So what that means is we have suppliers on here to talk about how they can help you grow your business. We, have mindset coaches on here talking about how to help you grow your business. We're all about business and basically introducing you to different suppliers and different ways that help you within your business.
This is actually, we will say, for all intents and purposes, editing Kat. And the reason that I wanted to hop on here today and give this little intro is because we recorded the episode that is coming out this upcoming Friday prior to the whole, I don't know, we'll call it the 24-hour blackout of TikTok. And so some things have changed, some haven't since then. But I wanted to hop on here because that might seem a little bit, for lack of a better term, like old news. Having stated that, to give a little bit of an update, just for anyone who is interested, is, obviously anybody who is in the US that is listening to this and experienced what we'll call the 8 hour blackout. And what transpired is, as of what initially would have been Saturday for us, but was actually, because they're living in the future, would have already been Sunday. TikTok went down, and it went down, I think, 8-9 o'clock Central Time, obviously depends on where you're at. And you got a notification saying, oh, we're so sorry. The US has instated a law that says, we can't exist, or, that is against us, but we are diligently working with the new administration to figure this out. And 7, 8, whatever. I know that I realized that it was back up about 1:30, 2 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. My daughter realized it very, very quickly. And if I could, I would put a picture of my dog staring at everybody, because I was of the belief prior to all this that it was not going to go away permanently, that they would figure something out, or something would be figured out, whether it was figured out, prior to it going dark or figured out later, it would get figured out. Having stated that and talking about this, obviously any US user received another notification saying, hey, we are so grateful for the new administration as we work through this. I want to always put this is my caveat to this. And that is that as of today, which is January 22nd, 2025, TikTok has, in essence, a 75-day extension. Now, there's several things that could happen. There has been new legislation that has been introduced to change the ban. There has been some talks about, possibly maybe not selling all of it, or selling part of it, or having some, mix thereon of. If you are someone who avidly listens to TikTok, or watches, I should say, doesn't just listen. I might be the only person that puts a video and forgets about it and just listens to it over and over again sometimes. I think a lot of people who have TikTok, i.e. as a revenue generating software platform, social media for their small business, or you're an influencer, or you're a marketing agency that is geared solely towards TikTok, realize very quickly overnight that there has to be a level of diversity in how you're interacting with your client base. I think that a lot of people were pleasantly surprised to see that with all this going into effect, that, oh, wow, all these people joined me on Instagram. And I know I saw somebody talking about how they spent 5 hours copying all the names and the Instagram accounts of their favorite people, because it's a huge amount that they were following and they didn't want to lose them. I won't say I spent 5 hours. I probably spent about 45 minutes looking for some people that I really wanted to make sure that I could continue to follow. Here's the thing. At the end of the day, whether you see this as some kind of, we'll say, political pachinga, or some kind of people have now changed their opinion, or some, and I won't say deep state, and I won't even say the name of the company that some people are accusing is behind all this. I want you to think as you listen to this week's podcast about the fact of what I was just talking about. And that is, whenever you use some kind of social media platform or something, algorithms change, owners change, CEOs change, and there might possibly be a law limiting it or changing the essence of it in some way, shape, or form. All of these are applicable. So there is a certain amount of, you don't own that audience, that client base you don't own. Now, if you are utilizing that to build your email, or you are offering things on there and people have now signed up to your newsletter, you own that newsletter list, right? Or people who have bought, you're going to have that information ideally somewhere. So go into this listen, look at ways that, number one, you can back up your content so that you can utilize it across different platforms. Number two, look at it as, what are additional ways that I can build my audience? What are additional ways I can interact with my client base? And whether that is you are an influencer, you own a restaurant, and I speak in the podcast about this, but I want to touch base. My interaction prior to now has always been in a case where someone, and I have had everyone from nonprofit clients to my clients that are restaurants that have lost access to their social media platform. And for some people, not a big deal, but for some people, that's how they advertise their big fundraising event, in the case of a nonprofit. For some people, that's where people would go to look at what their weekly special is for the restaurant. And so, in all of these cases, we were able to find solutions for them. In one case for the restaurant, they ended up opening up a Facebook group while they tried to figure out how to get to the bottom and fix it. In another case, I've had a client just be like, throw their hands up, peace out, and say, I'm starting all over. And I've had every mix in between that. So it really just depends. What I was talking about is that when I have interacted with these in the past, it has all been based upon some type of cyber event, some type of losing access. The whole point that I'm making is that there's a couple of things that you want to do. One, you want to make sure that you're diversifying your platform so that you're, in some way utilizing, let's say if TikTok's your main thing, you still want to build your Instagram, you still want to build your newsletter. And while I realize some of these things seem like very common knowledge, I think that we have seen from how people reacted to this, just the fact that those things were happening. The second thing is you really want to think about how are you backing up the media that you're using? Because if you're not periodically pulling that information down, if something does happen, you lose out on that. And as a side note for this, anybody who utilized CapCut, if you did not download that information prior to Sunday, it took, I think, like 24 hours before it actually went back up live. So this is all to say that since we recorded the initial podcast, things have changed, and it is going to change in the next 75 days. I'm sure. I'm absolutely sure of it. So whichever social media you use, take all this in mind to look into options to back up your information, ways to diversify how you interact with your clients. And, while this does seem a little, I would say, dramatic, some of the things coming out, one of the businesses stated that a lot of people were traumatized by the back and forth, like, was it going to go dark? Was it not going to go dark? And especially for people that relied on TikTok for their income. And from as I understand it, there are people who were making more on TikTok than any platform that they were on. There is still a great deal of concern, even as of today, the 22nd, that it's going to be bought by Meta. And I saw someone's quote. They said almost the second worst thing is to be bought by Meta, or worse, it's going to be owned by the government. And, obviously we know Meta owns Instagram, Threads, and WhatsApp. And none of them, of course, responded for comment to the different things that I was reading. And while TikTok is no longer blocked in the US, I'm sure there's still lots of technical difficulties. We know that the executive order delayed it by 75 days. They're going to pursue a resolution. So I still say, no matter what you're doing, whether you're using RedNote, any Meta, Instagram, WhatsApp, Kaleidoscope, Amigahood, whatever, I highly recommend some of the things that I talk about on this podcast, backing up. And I could go more in depth with this, but really, I just wanted you to know that I am aware that things have changed, and I know that it is an ever-changing thing. I still think this is a great opportunity to think about your options that are available out there and look forward.
So traditionally, if we were not doing dry January, we'd be pouring ourselves a shot, grabbing a margarita, and getting cozy, because today's episode is super packed. And by super packed, I mean we're a little light on the tequila today, but we are definitely not light on the tech. We will be covering some tech news. We'll be covering some things you can do for your small business, especially when it comes to backing up your social media. We will discuss something that is tech adjacent, and it's about who owns your audience and how to make sure that your audience can find you no matter what. And of course, we will talk about everything that's going on. So before we get too deep into that, traditionally we would be pulling up a shot or a margarita or a paloma or a ranch water, depending on what you like, and talking about the tequila of the week. But because it is January, and because we know so many people have decided to do a little bit of a non-alcoholic, let's say dry January, we are going to introduce you to the Mocktail Club. If you haven't heard of the Mocktail Club, it is definitely worth checking out. Now, so you may ask, what is the Mocktail Club? And by the way, I got this at Target. So you can get this at most Targets wherever you're at. It is a premium brand offering non-alcoholic crafted cocktails with organic and natural ingredients. They include superfoods, teas, and spices. These beverages are designed as a flavorful alternative to a traditional cocktail. So catering to someone who prefers to do a dry January or just prefers a non-alcoholic option. So currently they have Manhattan Berry, Havana Twist, Capri Spritz, Bombay Fire, and Bali Breeze. Now, I'm a big fan of companies that are women owned. And of course, Mocktail Club is not only women owned, but it is also an African American owner as well. So definitely check it out when you get a chance. So I have Havana Twist, which there were only 2 options at the Target when I went today, but I thought this would be a good one because this one has lime, cucumber, mint, and I just thought it would be fun. So we'll give it a taste, check it out, and see how it is. Most of these are caffeine free, by the way, for any of you who don't want to be up all night, so to speak. Oh, and of course, you can always purchase them through their website. So before we get in too deep into this, let's give this a try and see what it tastes like. Oh, that's actually really refreshing. Very, very pleasant. Oh, and of course, it has one of my favorite things, probiotics in it. It has organic apple cider, a little vinegar. Very, very nice. I like this. Very fresh and refreshing. I would highly recommend this right here. So try this one. This is Havana Twist from the Mocktail Club. I like that a lot. I'm going to give it 2 thumbs up, actually. All right, so let's get into it today. So we are recording this on January 17th. And the reason that I'm giving you the date, and the reason I say you want to pull up your mocktail, show your mocktail, or you might want to pull up a shot, depending on what you do. So we all have been patiently waiting to figure out what the Supreme Court was going to do with the TikTok ban. And as of this afternoon, they announced in a unanimous decision, which that part was kind of shocking, that it's going to go through. They don't think that there is a strong enough case. They do not feel that it is hurting people's freedom of speech. Now, I do not personally spend a lot of time selling on TikTok. I will tell you, I absolutely love the app. I find it to be easy to use. It's fun to go on there, and it does create a great sense of community. But let's talk about, what does this really mean? And how did we get from point A to point B? So, as I'm sure you know, in December of 2024, the federal legislation officially banned TikTok from being downloaded on new devices in the United States due to ongoing security concerns related to its parent company, ByteDance. Now, all users who have TikTok, of course, can continue using TikTok, but that is up until the 19th. ByteDance has stated that they're just going to pull the app. They're not going to sell. They're not giving people their algorithms, and they're like, we're out. Now, at the heart of the issue, what the government is saying is that they have concerns over the user's data, so the privacy and potential surveillance. Lawmakers have cited that ByteDance employees in China could access US user data, while TikTok has implemented several measures, like Project Texas, in case you don't know, so for all those in Texas, that they have localized all the data storage for the US people of TikTok in Texas. So, but it hasn't been enough to satisfy regulators. Now, as of, I would literally say, 1:30 this afternoon, there's a couple of things that have come out over the last 24 hours. One is Biden came out and said that he will not impose any fines. You know, obviously there's like a 24-hour transition period from the 19th to the 20th, but he will not impose any fines. He did state that they were going to sign a 36-hour extension saying that, nope, you know, we're going to leave this up to the next administration due to kind of what's gone on. As I'm sure you saw, the new administration, Senor Trump, had actually submitted an amicus brief saying that he wanted to put a stay or a hold upon the decision being made. But at this point, that would be a moot point anyways, because the Supreme Court said, you know, no go, we don't think that this is the route. So what does this mean for creators and businesses? Well, the short-term impact is, obviously TikTok's future is uncertain. So, you know, I mean, if there was ever a reason to want to diversify your social media or diversify whatever platform you're on, this would be a prime example. Now, lots of the same creators you can find on TikTok, you can find them on Instagram, you can find them on Rednote, you can find them on Blue Sky, you can find them on YouTube. Many are doubling down on Reels, some are doubling down on YouTube, some are doubling down on Shorts, and of course, there are even Snapchat spotlights at this point. What is the long-term effect of this? Now, the long-term effect is that if TikTok and everything goes through, and like I said, this is an ever-changing, every single day type thing. I say type thing. This is an ever-changing story. I don't fully think that we'll know exactly what's going to transpire until after the 20th, the 21st, 22nd. There is some, I would say, whispering, some thought process that the incoming administration is going to issue an executive order stating not to ban TikTok. Now, how that's going to come about, if it's going to come about, we will not know anything until after the 20th. Now, this episode will come out next week, so that might already be. But the long-term impact is that if TikTok completely goes away, there are creators that their entire audience has been built on TikTok. And so they're going to have to rebuild that. There are businesses that are going to be affected because that is where their audience is. So what is the most important thing that you do if you are a person who works on social media of any kind? And I promise I will not give you a lecture, and I promise I will not preach on here. But I will tell you, there are a couple of things to think about if you're a business owner, if you're a creator, if you're a UCG content, whatever it may be. And one of the things that I think is really important to think about is whether, when you do not own your audience, and that's kind of, it's a more in-depth conversation that needs to be had. But when I have dealt with my clients, when I have dealt with my customers that I work with, which is mainly small and medium-sized businesses and, you know, some other content creators, I have always dealt with them in the essence of I have experienced this cybersecurity issue. I can't access whether it be my Instagram, my Facebook, my whatever. What do I do now? Because I have no way to get my promotions, to get my sales, to get things out at this point. And I don't know if you have ever tried to interact with Meta and get something back once it has existed out of the clients that I've worked with. I would really say at this point, it's like a 50-50 split. 50% are able to get their accounts back. Does take time. And, for a lot of people, time is money. 50% are like throwing their hands up. We won't use dirty words on this episode, but throwing their hands up and they're like, we're going to go another route. I have a restaurant that I worked with that lost their Facebook account. So they were like, all right, well, we can't do this. They started another account. They opened up a Facebook group and they were able to bring a lot of the same clients over. I always say that, when in doubt, I'm going to talk about, cybersecurity practices. Use your best cybersecurity practices that you possibly can think of. And, some of those are obviously whenever set up multi-factor authentication. If you use some type of password protector or password security, always use those when in doubt. And of course, change your password we'll be reasonable, every 90 days at least, and make sure that you're not using the exact same password for your TikTok account, for your bank account, and for everywhere else. The other thing is, if you are a business and let's say the only person that has access to that account or the person that created that account has not added an additional admin, and let's say your executive leaves or the person that was in charge of that leaves and now you have no access, okay, make sure multiple people have access to that business account. That will prevent that. So that's my little spiel there. The second part of that conversation, which I think is where I started, is about audience. Is do you own your audience? The second part of this conversation is with any social media and kind of what we went through, whether it's a cyber breach, whether it's TikTok being banned, whether it's a change in the algorithm, whatever it is, shadow ban, you lose your check mark, you aggravate somebody, whatever it is, how do you ensure that if your TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, go through the whole plethora of social media that we have in this day and age, gets lost, you can't access it, how do you ensure that you can still interact with those clients? And so this is where I would say it's very, very important to have a multi-prong, so to speak, marketing plan or way that you interact with your clients. So, what that is, if let's say your largest base is on Instagram, do you have your Instagram followers' emails? Have you given them an opt-in option? Different ways so that if something happens over here, you still have that to build upon, even if it's you send an email and you say, hey, guess what? Life happens. Here's what happened. Now come and follow me on YouTube. I think as with the, pending TikTok situation, we have seen several people that are like, hey, guess what? I'm here, but I'm also here. So check me out on Instagram, YouTube, Blue Sky, Red Note. I don't know. There's something called Pixel Food, Snapchat, Kaleidoscope, any of the places, WhatsApp, if you're going to create a group. The other option is if you're a medium, small business, you're some form of that, you can always build an app. There's several different ways to go. That's a much more in-depth conversation, but there's that. So, here's some options for you. Now, what I want to talk about in particular is, let's say that the stars align, TikTok doesn't get banned, but for whatever reason, let's say that something happens and you lose access to your account. So I would highly recommend looking up whatever social media that you use. So TikTok, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and finding out how can I download my data? Because this is the point of, I always say, you want to make sure you have a backup plan. And for your backup plan, you want to make sure you have another backup plan. But you want to download your data. And there's different ways to go about that. You can always look that up through Google, YouTube, other ways. The other thing is, if you use some type of social media management tool. So you've got Hootsuite, you've got Planoly, and there's a ton of other ones. These platforms that schedule, they actually a lot of times will archive those posts. So you'll have that in there, which makes it a little bit easier for you to keep them and know, okay, I have this here, you know. And the same thing is, I mean, if you're using CapCut or you're using other programs, is look and find out what is their storage, what is the limitations, how long do they keep these for, so that you have that information. And my biggest thing is, you know, I always recommend that you have it in multiple places. You have it on a hard drive somewhere, have it on the cloud somewhere, because, you know, I work with a photographer that has always used an external hard drive, and lo and behold, something happened and their external hard drive died. So they were like, had I had a cloud backup, I wouldn't be calling my most recent customers, clients, and saying, hey, guess what? I know we took those great pictures, but now we have to take them again. So, you know, think about what it's going to cost. And of course, you know, there's all different versions of backup. You've got Google Drive, you've got Dropbox, you've got OneDrive, and miscellaneous others. Look at what's going to be best. Now, you can always use specialized backup tools for social media. To name a few, you've got Social Safe, you have Digimind Social, you have Zapier, you know, and different tools. I'm not making a recommendation about each. With this, like if you were to come to me and say, hey, Kat, my social media is super important. I want to make sure that I have it. I want to keep. We would do an in-depth discussion about what type of media, the size that you're keeping, the whole thing, to find out what's best. Because, you know, Social Safe may be great for a certain size client, but I've worked with a client, and just to use an example, that is a marketing company, and there's no way some of these solutions out there were going to work with them. We actually had to we set up an offsite backup into the cloud that was much more in depth to make sure that everything was kept safe and secure. But, you know, these are going to give you options to consolidate your social media backups in one place. They're also great for monitoring and archiving information. And of course, when we talk about Zapier, they're automating the process of saving social media content to your chosen storage. The other thing you want to think about is the secondary of that is, if you live and breathe, and I don't want to say die because we don't want anyone to die, but get us muerto by your analytics, is where are those analytics stored? Can you look over the last 12 months and say, that is the post that really hit, I want to rerun that? Because let's be honest, a lot of people reuse posts, because I may see it, but my BFF over here may not see it for months. And that, you know, that's just the nature of the beast. So think about those things. These are things to look at as you back up. I always say regular backups are super important. Make sure that you have a plan. The second thing is, if you are backing that up, make sure that you're checking to make sure that it's backing up correctly, that it's not corrupted, that you can open the content. If there's a particular thing, like you want to screenshot, things like that. So you want to back up contents, likes, engagements. There are some third-party options for that to look into. Look into Sociograph, SocialBee, Recording Analytics. Look at Sprout Social. And, you know, I'm going to use the term I always use. So if you were drinking, you would be, let's put a nail in that coffin. So let's make sure that we have a schedule. And what I mean by a schedule is set a schedule to automate backups, or to make sure that you're backing up if you're the automation version of that. So I, for some reason, some of the information I pulled was like quarterly. We're not going to wait quarterly. I would say back up your stuff at least minimum, especially social media, depending on the content. If you post 3 times a week, back up every 2 weeks. If you post more often, like let's say you're posting 3 times a day, you're doing reels, you're doing carousels, you're doing this, make sure that you're backing up once a week. And then you want to look at that information and, you know, I mean, I don't think there is really anything else to cover, but look at your options, make a plan. As always, you know, reach out if you want to schedule a consultation to go over the best way to back up this information, or to back up anyways. So let's talk about, just to like kind of we'll beat a dead horse. Whether you are a digital nomad, a small business owner, your online presence in this day and age, of course, is extremely important. That's how you get your brand out. Yes, we go to in-person and in real life meetings, but you want to make sure that you're keeping this information somewhere that you have it. And of course, I'm going to leave you with a stat, and that is that 60% of small businesses experience data loss, and lots of them don't recover quickly, and some of them never recover. And obviously, it's not just small businesses, but creators, influence, even let's say it's not even a small business. Let's say that you have all your photos of the last year, 2 years, your travel on here. Make sure that you back it up. So keeps yourself protected. I mean, I don't know what else could be said. First and foremost, I want to thank you for joining us today. I know this is a lot of, I would say, late breaking and subject to change in the next 24 hours. I hope that everyone, by the time you listen to this, has had an absolute wonderful federal holiday. Enjoy your Martin Luther King Day. And I look forward to seeing you again. I do ask this. If you love this, please make sure that you follow us on whatever your preferred podcast platform is. Make sure you follow, leave a comment, leave something saying, hey, I love it. If you don't like it, don't tell anybody. And also, the other thing is share with your friends. I mean, share this information. Make sure they're backing up their social media. That's all I have for you. I'm going to enjoy my Mocktail Club Havana Twist. And, I am going to sit here for the next, couple hours and see what changes. But I hope you guys have a great day. Adios.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Tech and Tequila. I hope you enjoyed our conversation today. To stay updated about all things tech and more, don't forget to visit us at our website, shelbyts.com. If you loved what you heard, remember to show your support by liking, sharing, and subscribing to our podcast. Your 5-star ratings and reviews mean the world to us and help us to reach more listeners just like you. So muchas gracias again for joining us with Tech and Tequila. Thank you so much. You learned a lot about tech, and maybe you had a nice drink of tequila.